undercover narcotics agent. I sit with murderers and made men, and I lie. I lie my ass off.
Washington wants the biggest bust in history. Pablo Escobar.
And his main distributor, Roberto Alcano. Mazer, you're partnering with Abreu.
I think we've been doing this backwards. We've been following the drugs to get to the bad guys. What if we chase the money?
We need to find new undercover identities.
Hey, look at this, Falcone.
Look at the dates.
Yeah?
You do the math. I'd be 77 years old.
That's about right. Leathery and craggly.
Here we go. Bob Musella.
Welcome to a life of crime.
Let's do this. Welcome to the United States.
These men launders all the money for the cartel.
I need a face-to-face with your boss.
It was an audition. You got the part.
So, Mr. Musella, what can you do for me?
She's my present for you tonight, Mr. Bob.
I'm engaged.
So?
Are you kidding me? A fiance, Bob?
Meet your soon-to-be wife. Kathy Ertz, Bob Mazer. I wish you many happy years.
Damn, I need a fiance.
Have you ever had your palm read? Destiny has marked you.
You know who's the biggest money launderer in the U.S.?
I thought it was me.
You mess this up, you'll kill you, and it will make you die for days.
I do not do business under threat.
Unfortunately, you are not in a position to dictate terms to Don Pablo.
This is a prank.
One wrong move and we're dead.
In my business, when there is no loyalty, it never ends well.
Are you in danger from Pablo Escobar? You have a chance to take them all down.
Thanks, everybody.
What up, people?
Hello, hello.
Guys, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on the movie.
Thank you very much.
Ben, let's start with you. This character that you're playing reminded me a little bit of like a King of New York, sort of Christopher Walken, sort of like a guy who may be a killer, but at the same time is just sort of a businessman in this position. At least that's how he views himself.
First of all, I'll take that comparison any day of the week. I love
one of the great drug kingpins of all time in movies.
I raised my eyebrows at that one. I liked it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the guy that this character is based upon actually existed and is still alive today. And, you know, the one thing that intrigued me about taking this part on, because, you know, let's be honest, it's familiar territory for me. I've played members of cartels in the past.
Traffic, right?
Traffic is one of the examples that I'm proud of. But Brad had a keen interest, and his mother, who wrote the screenplay, had a keen interest in actually not approaching it from a singular dimensional point of view, because that just renders something very uninteresting. What he was intrigued with, and what I shared with him, was the possibility of revealing the human side of a person who operates on this side of the law. He's clearly someone who's extremely dangerous, you know, is involved with, you know, shipping tons of product, and, you know, it's a dangerous business in general. The cartel business is not one you want to be in. And yet what we learn throughout the film is that he, on some level, is a mirror image of the protagonist. Bryan Cranston's character, he is someone who is loyal in his friendships. He's a smart and successful businessman. He's a family man, we discover. He's a loving husband and a doting father, and a man of faith. So it was fun to be able to kind of shine a light on those aspects of a person who almost immediately from the outset you would easily categorize as a bad guy. It kind of makes it more complex.
Yeah, we rarely humanize those on the side of the cartel for better or worse reasons, I'm not sure, but we rarely take...
Probably for the right reasons.
Yeah. But we rarely take the time to say there are probably reasons why people are on this side of the cartel, and while they're on this side, that doesn't mean that they're not human in many ways. I mean, it's a business in a lot of ways that a lot of people grow up with. And
well, I was having this conversation last night with Jess First, who's a co-producer on the film, and she said something very smart, which is that we all, you, Brad, myself, and everyone in the audience, people listening out there, we all have our prescribed set of principles and morals that we follow. And those vary from person to person. You know, we have a former president who was engaged in a scandalous affair, and by his definition, he never had sex with that woman. But by other people's definition, he had sex with that woman. And so in a similar way, someone like Alcaíno, although he's probably had his hand, in the film anyway, had his hand in the murder of certain people in the face of doing business, maybe that's something he can live with, because the greater achievement for himself is that he's taking care of his family, he's an upstanding member of his community, et cetera, et cetera. So we all have ways of justifying these kinds of things, and mine was not to prejudge his set of morals for himself, but to try to bring a humanity to it.
Brad, I wasn't aware that your mother wrote the script.
Yeah, my mom wrote it. Yeah.
How did that come about? What's it like working with your mother in that capacity?
It was uniquely challenging, but deeply rewarding at the same time. I went to school up the road at Tisch, and my dear friend Don Sikorsky, who I played basketball with in NYU, he's got an investigative journalism background, documentary filmmaker background. He brought me the book, and we were looking for writers, tirelessly going through writer after writer. I'd read 50-plus scripts and just couldn't find the one. I wanted to make something that was layered, that felt sophisticated, had emotion and intellect, and I think Benjamin was just very eloquent about humanizing these people, because it's all about these different relationships. Bob's relationship with Kathy, Bob's relationship with his wife Ev, Bob's relationship with Amir, his partner, Bob's relationship with Alcaíno, about betrayal, and all these layers. And I needed to find a writer who could really evoke that. And also, Donnie Brasco is a movie I really loved and enjoyed. I knew we were playing in a similar territory, and I needed to make sure that we differentiated ourselves. So Don said, I think we should hire your mom. She's the most sophisticated writer. And I was like, man, we're never getting my mom the job. Like, that's never happening. And
you just immediately see yourself in writing meetings just being like, Mom, no.
Well, actually, as you say it, I mean, obviously we all have mothers who wouldn't be here. So we ended up getting my mom the job. And my mother, we're very similar, but we're very, very different. And I always say I work for the movie. Like, I don't care if you're paying me whatever, nothing. I work for the movie. That's what dictates my decisions. That's what dictates, you know, how we do things. And my mother would write things, and it's just her personality. She'd be like, oh, this is great. It's brilliant. I got it. And I'd read it. I'd be like, it doesn't work. And she'd be like, no. And we would start slaving our heads, and I'd be like, honestly, it doesn't work. And we would it would slowly like get a little bit exacerbated. And finally, I'm like, you're not my mom. You're the screenwriter. And she'd look at me, and she'd be like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're not my mom. You're the screenwriter. Like, you got to do it. Like, it's a director's medium. Like, I know it's a roadmap. The screenplay's a roadmap to get to the final destination. So even though I was facetious, I was sort of serious that at the end of the day, love you, Mom, hired you, you got a job to do, and sorry, but in this instance, I'm going to win on this one. So,
I'm just going to ask, were there ever any tears?
Oh, maybe some things thrown. You know?
Because as soon as I hear, like, you're not my mom, you're the screenwriter, I just imagine a mother going, but I am your mom.
There were definitely some family moments playing out.
The reality of this is that I look at the closest relationships that I have in my life, and I think that those relationships are relationships that can survive good and bad. And my mom's very close to the vest, and I'm very open, and I want to share everything with the world that I go through so people can learn and be educated in their own right from my own experiences, because that's what we're all here for, to evolve and challenge ourselves to be the best individuals we can be as people and how we treat other people. So, you know, the truth is it was very hard for my mom and I, but that difficulty was rewarding. And what I bring with real positivity is, at the end of that journey, which is the movie you're seeing today, we would have never been able to create that if we didn't go through the hardships. And a real relationship, which I have with my mom, you know, a deeply understanding, trusting, you know, evolved relationship, and an equality of that. As a young boy, I grew into a man, and then, you know, I have this mother that she raised to be a man. You know, there's a mutual respect there. So I'm proud of the fact that it wasn't easy, because we got through those arduous times, and the reward was, you know, the decisions we made that ultimately ended up being the movie that everybody's going to see.
Well, the reward is a great movie and probably a stronger bond between the two of you.
No question. My wonderful editor, David Rosenblum, who came in after Luis Carbiar and Jeff McAvoy, two editors I'd worked with prior. David, I knew when we first finished the movie, we tested it, and we were handing it off. We made it as an independent. And we actually shot it in London, and we shot it in London current day, obviously, and we captured the 80s in Florida, and we're having to double that, which was a massive challenge. You know, anything you have to do in independent cinema, you know, you just got to get it done. That's your job.
You shot this movie for the most part in London?
90% in London, and I shot 10% in Tampa Bay.
That's incredible.
And for those of you who haven't seen it, the film unfolds in places like London, Paris, New York, Miami, Panama, Colombia.
Yeah.
It's truly global in scope, and the fact that we were limited geographically merely to shooting on location on sets in London and then 10% in Tampa is a testament to how successful the film is when you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. You never get the sense that it's mostly one city. I mean,
Perhaps we shouldn't have said anything.
I did my job then. Yeah.
But I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the way that you shot the film, not just locations, but the actual look of it, the texture. The texture feels a little burnt at times, like South Florida. And someone told me recently that you shot it on digital, and the way that it looked to me was almost like that sort of Altman McCabe kind of flashing the film a little bit beforehand. How did you actually go about sort of shooting this and creating that texture?
Josh Reese is the cinematographer, and I have to say that the beautiful thing about a digital medium for young aspiring filmmakers in particular is I just say what you have that I ultimately didn't really have but was burgeoning is just go shoot. You can make a movie with your iPhone. It's been done. So if you're not trying to get it, if you're not getting it done in your life, there's no excuses because making movies are accessible at a consumer level now. So in how that's applicable to this movie, I want to always shoot on film. I believe there is an intangible subconscious in how things and decisions are made within a movie and the fabric of it, the layers upon layers of choices of sound, choices of picture, choices of color, choices of actor, choices of everything, you know, creates this fabric and how it impacts us. So for me, film has this just feel to it that we don't know, but subconsciously it really moves and impacts us. So as a result of that, I was not given the luxury to shoot film for fiscal reasons, and I had to figure out with Josh, how do we make this look film? So we used these old Hawk lenses from like 30, 40 years ago, and we went through the color grading process, and we tested and tested and tested, and we just did everything we could under the sun. So when you say something like that, it's the highest compliment to myself and Josh and all of us because that was the aesthetic we were going for.
Yeah, it looks great.
Thank
Benjamin, I have to ask, I think Cranston, coming out of Breaking Bad, became the actor that every other actor wanted to work with. Like, essentially, if you talk to people who've been in movies, they're like, well, they told me Bryan Cranston was going to be in it, so I said, yes, I'm in, no matter what it was. Was it kind of like that with you for this? Were you excited to work with Bryan Cranston?
I was excited to work with him. To be honest, I wasn't terribly familiar with his work on Breaking Bad. I had seen a couple of episodes early on, but you know, as the father of 2 young kids, you know, the luxury of binge watching anything, let alone watching a single show consistently, just never really presents itself as an opportunity to me. But you know, I was keenly aware of the skill set he was going to bring to the job, and well deserved. So my first question to Brad was, in regards to that, was, what can I expect? I always prepare, you know, to the nth degree anyway as an actor. And of course, I had a wealth of information to prepare with, starting with, of course, the screenplay and, of course, the book, among other things. But I wanted keen and personal insight from Brad as to how I could approach it. And he said something very memorable to me, which was, he said, Benjamin, straight up, Bryan is truly going to be one of the sweetest, dearest men you could ever hope to meet. And that's very reflective of who he is. However, when that camera starts rolling and it comes time to work, he becomes a heavyweight prize fighter. And if you step into the ring not prepared, he's going to beat the hell out of you. And so, you know, I really took that to heart.
But that's the way it should be in a lot of ways on a film set. I mean, if you're not... a film set is burning money, and if you're not coming prepared,
that's right. Everybody
should be prepared, or otherwise you're throwing money out the window.
Well, even beyond that, and you're absolutely right there. But beyond that, if any actor worth his salt wants to step into the ring with the best fighter there is, and it's not necessarily a competition, but it's an opportunity to test your creative boundaries. I've you know, worked in this milieu before. So the character, as we've already talked about, is not necessarily unfamiliar to me. What made it more interesting was the human dynamic we talked about that we wanted to bring to him. But to do it in the face of someone as lauded and as skilled as Bryan, was an opportunity I hadn't been presented with before. And the result is something I'm actually quite proud of now because, you know, the relationship is not an antagonistic one. It's one that hinges completely on, unbeknownst to my character, because it's a dupe, a real friendship that should evolve between these two men who, although they're on opposite sides of the line, share very similar qualities between them. And so for me, my greatest challenge was to be able to make that friendship seem organic.
Who would you say in your career was the sort of the first prize fighter that you had to get in the ring with, that sort of challenged you and made you sort of step up? I mean, there's obviously the first job that you go into that is kind of like stepping into the ring for the first time, but the first time that you were sort of faced with acting alongside, you know, someone that you admired and considered a great.
You know, to be honest with you, and I've worked with a lot of really great actors, Meryl Streep among them, and I'm always in awe of wonderful performers, but I've never, I guess I'm too stupid to feel daunted by anyone.
Well, you also can't feel daunted because you wouldn't be able to get the work done, right?
Well, I think in part because it reflects my approach to the work. I see myself as a craftsman. I come from a blue-collar background. My uncles are carpenters and draftsmen, and my father was a tin knocker. If you want to build something, you have to start with a strong foundation, if you're going to build a house, as an example. So when I approached this craft, it was from an academic standpoint first. So, you know, went to I'm a classically trained actor, and so my number one job beyond staying employed is to come prepared, know my stuff. And, you know, with the support of someone like Brad, that's the other component to this is it's one thing to step into an environment where there's little to no familiarity and rely entirely on your own self-confidence. It's another thing to have someone who's known you for more than 20 years and say, you know what, not only am I going to gift you with this opportunity, but I believe in you 110%, and you're going to kill it. So for him to share that personal message with me, it gives me the fortitude to step into that ring and take my best swing.
How have you guys known each other for 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
How?
You want me to share?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so when I first met Brad Furman, he was a wet behind the ears 19-year-old kid who was the assistant to my New York agent, Sue Liveman at ICM. And when I first met Brad, it was over the phone. As you know, there's never almost an opportunity in person to meet an assistant to your agent because it's always over the phone. Your agent's always, you know, MIA anyway. But I was doing Law and Order down on Chelsea Piers, and Brad would sometimes run scripts or memos or whatever down to the set, and it gave us an opportunity to hang out a little bit and chat, and that evolved into a real friendship, and we've been friends ever since.
When I was an assistant, it was like Groundhog's Day. It was torture. You go in the morning, and you get in, you check the voicemail. Every day, the person cleaning the office would come in at the same time, and it was quite surreal. The grind was just the same thing every day. And when you get a call that's like, you know, Benjamin needs this script urgently down at Law and Order, and you got to run it to Chelsea Piers, because they typically pay runners to do that. Oh, you're like, yo, this is it. I'm out of here.
I'm out.
You know, this is freedom on a whole other level. So not only do you get that.
I've been an intern at production offices before. Any opportunity to get out of that office and go somewhere and meet a filmmaker or an actor, you're like, yeah, let's go.
So to do that, and then this dude's so cool. You know, I went down there and I was like, he's like, what's up, homie? How you doing? Da, 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 da. Come sit down. He's like, oh, I got these free kicks. You're size 11. Oh, yeah, cool. Take a pair. And, you know, and you're just sitting there like, I want to be that dude. You know, that's the feeling that I had. I mean, you know, and then you leave the office, and then all of a sudden this bus drives by, and it's Wilkie Rodriguez, and Benjamin's on the bus. You know, the dude you're just with in the office is on Times Square billboards on the bus, you know, and like, it was a very surreal thing, but he was, I mean, you look at him, he's so humble. He was just so chill. He was so real. He was so honest. He was so, treated me like an equal that I just fell in love with him.
Did you tell him that you wanted to be a filmmaker? Did you know at that time that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
You know, when you go to, it's interesting, when you go to film school, they ask you a question, you know, 100, 300 people in the room, how many people want to be a director? Every hand goes up. But the joke of that is like, nobody really knows what that means. Even I, like the politics that I deal with. I mean, I should not make movies. I should sincerely go run for president, because at the end of the day, like, it's political nightmare out there. So there's so much that goes into those challenges. And actually at the time, I was just trying to hustle and make money and do goofy stuff on the side and trying to figure out everything. I wanted in my heart to be a filmmaker, but even then I didn't fully know what it meant. And Benjamin taught me one of my greatest life lessons. So again, I can't believe I'm actually going to tell this story. A friend of mine was a test photographer, was working with a test photographer, and he was modeling, and he was making all this money. And like, he wasn't working, and he was pulling in so much cash. And he says to me, yo, you should shoot with this woman, Leslie Dart. I'm telling you, she'll shoot you. You'll get booked on the side. Every once in a while, you make money. And I'm like, dude, I'm not a model. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm not a model either, man, but they put me on a cruise. They took my picture, he's making all this money. So I was like, all right. So I go meet this woman, Leslie Dart, in the West Village, and she puts me in all these goofy outfits, and, she says, bring all your clothes. It's a weird thing. And you're paying her. So you test and you shoot. So you get, and then at the time, it was film, so you get contact sheets. And I had them in an envelope, an 8.5 by 11 envelope. And we used to go to this place on, was it West 4th, the Bagel, right? Yeah, the Bagel. We used to go to the Bagel in the mornings. I would meet him. It was the coolest thing, man. I sit with Benjamin Bratt outside the Bagel, And
Baker Street.
We sit outside the Bagel, and I have this thing, and he's like, yo, what's that? So all of a sudden, I was like, here's this guy, he's modeling for Wilkie Rodriguez, he's a big movie star, and I was like, I don't even know why I had them. So he snatched it out of my hand, he looked at it, and I didn't want to give it to him. He's like, you trying to model? And I was like, well, nah, like I didn't know what to say. And he's like, let me tell you something. And he said, no matter what you do in life, no matter what it is, you have to own it 100%. And I went, because he saw how I was insecure, how I didn't know what I was doing.
What I saw, he's a good-looking kid. What I saw were some handsome photographs, but he didn't look at ease. It didn't look like it was a natural fit to him. So I just was straight up and said, listen, I don't know if this is your passion, if this is what you want to do or not, but what I can see, this isn't it for you. But whatever it is that you're going to choose, just own it, man. Own it 100%.
I knew in my heart I wanted to be a filmmaker, but we're all trying to find ways to sort of get by and do those things. So
part of growing up.
Yeah, and I applied that to my life with being a filmmaker. Once I understood that and I processed it, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And I have so much to credit him for in that respect, because when somebody teaches me a life lesson with that depth and value, I carry it with me forever. And that's why I told the goofy story, because I think it's one of my greatest life lessons, and Benjamin gave that to me. So when we were ready to make this movie, and we had always wanted to work together, and this was the one, it's the greatest gift back that I could give to him, to play Roberto Alcano, because I knew he would absolutely crush it. I knew he was a Shakespearean trained actor. I knew his heart. And also, let's be frank, acting is between director and actor is about trust, but ultimately, as I was listening to you guys talk before, it's about psychology. And he's an athlete. He's an animal in that sense. I mean, I've seen him in the gym. It's like not even, I mean, come on. So it's like, it speaks for itself. And I knew the minute I tapped into the psychology of the competitive nature of what he had to do to train, to be prepared for that fight, he would put the time in, the hard work in, the energy and the effort, so that when it came to, being on that stage, he left nothing, left everything out on the floor. And every actor you just have to have a different way in with, and I just knew him, and that's all part of this process. That's why this was a real family affair. The obvious part is my mother, but Leguizamo starred in The Take for me years ago, became one of my closest friends in the world. Cranston was in Lincoln Lawyer with me. Yul Vasquez, I knew 20 years, back at the same time. My composer, I've known 20 years. Josh Reese, the cinematographer, I mean, I found him in a back closet, literally, like putting wires in a machine on a 50-cent G-Unit job I did when I had never even had shot green screen. And he came out of the woodworks. We were up for like so many hours. He's like, what are you guys doing? You just press this button, this button, this button, and you key the green screen. And I was like, who are you, dude? And I was like, who are you? And he's like, I was like, what do you want to do with your life? He's like, I want to be a cinematographer. And I was like, oh, follow me and follow my boy Lucas Etlin, and you'll get there. And he did that, and now he shot The Infiltrator. So
the lesson repays itself. Look right.
Yeah, I mean, so all these stories are part of the the larger fabric of our lives, and hopefully imparting.
That's kind of everything that you need going into shooting an independent film, though, is you need a bunch of people around you who trust you and have your back. You don't want anybody sort of looking at Brad at one point where he's having a problem behind the camera, being like, oh, I don't know if the director knows what's going on right now. You say, no, that's Brad. Does he need my help? Can I help him? He's my friend.
1,000%, especially coming off Runner. I needed a support team and a family behind me, and you know, that we just went to war. I mean, you know, that's what filmmaking is.
Yeah, the neat trick is that you watch the film and it is truly global in scope, and none of those obstacles you can't get a sense of that watching the film. Oh, yeah. It seems hiccupless, and yet when you reflect back on the process, you know, especially in an independent realm, there's never enough time, there's never enough money, so those obstacles are immediately in the way, and then you have all these other logistical things come into place. You have to band together. It's a family that he puts together, people that he can rely on, and we rely on him in turn, and together you get it done. But obviously, he's the tip of the spear, and so he has to take the brunt of it and take it on, and you know, he's our general, and we follow him into any and every battle that comes our way.
And that's a lot of what the movie's about as well, family, and the families that are together and not together, and fake, sort of how a sort of faux family can become your real family in many ways.
Yeah, there's no question. I've seen it on every movie I've done. Art imitates life. What's going on behind the camera, the decisions you're making, the bonds of relationships, these things consciously and subconsciously translate to the film. I saw it on the take. I was making a movie. We had like $500,000. We were getting hammered every day. The police shut us down. I mean, literally, like, we had helicopters in LA. The police were there. All the gangbangers who were supporting our movie were like, you know, had their hands behind their backs. And I turned to the cameraman. Josh was second unit. My boy Lucas was first unit. I said, shoot that right now. Just roll the cameras on that. And it's all in the movie. So at the end of the day, that hell we were going through, it was like, let's just own it, whatever it is. And, you know, I think, you know, you look at El Mariachi, you look at The French Connection, you look at those stories of filmmakers that have come before myself, and I've just said, like, oh, wow, I want to learn from what they've done and apply it. And, you know, I think it's very applicable to this movie.
Absolutely. I'm going to open up to the audience for questions. Who has a question?
Hey, guys. I definitely can't wait to see this movie. I'm just curious to know, like, with the material that you guys were given, how were you able to flesh out the characters and give them the emotion that they needed?
I think that really starts with, well, first and foremost, by hiring my mom. It was a very anti-Hollywood decision. I had a manager when I first started the business who thankfully is no longer with me. And, well, that's real talk. I mean, let's be real. He didn't have my best interest at heart, and he didn't know what he was doing. And I gave him one of these things my mom wrote, and he was like, you know, she's too old. Nobody wants to get in a room with her and this, that, and the other. And I just was like, wow.
Is that about your mom?
Yeah. Oh, the ageism that exists and so many things that we see is just crazy. So at the end of the day, here you have this woman who's a mother. She was one of the first female litigators in Philadelphia. She started as a school teacher. She's someone who, she used to tell me a story about her pops would, you know, she'd have to get lunch money from him, and he had like no change. You know, he was always hustling on the side. He would go to the track in Jersey and try to make money, but he never had enough money for her to go to lunch. So she would go and either not eat or not have enough or whatever the case was. And it was embarrassing. It was tough for her. And she made this decision as a little girl. She's like, I never want to be reliant on a man. So when I was growing up, she was out earning my father. She was driving like a 968 Wimbledon Porsche, being this lawyer. And, you know, she was like a hot knife through butter. But ultimately in her heart, I think she was so creative, she wanted to be a screenwriter. And, well, no, not screenwriter. She wanted to be a writer, and then I think she got into screenwriting through me. But the journey of all this was an answer to your question, because I think it's all part and parcel. I hired a woman who's in her 60s. I hired a woman who's a mother. I hired a woman who lived her life as an educator and a lawyer. I hired this woman to cover what a lot of people told me is very masculine material. And when you make that anti-Hollywood decision, you're then infusing the characters and the people and imbuing them with a point of view that's unique and different and fresh. Because she's bringing ideas and thoughts and things that I would never come up with. The 30-year-old dude who's the dope new hot writer, you know, the young sexy guy or whatever he is, the nerdy dude who's a great writer, he doesn't have the life experience this woman has. He hasn't lived the way she's lived. She doesn't have the experience, which you can't put a dollar sign on it and price.
You also especially don't want someone coming in and trying to emulate the sort of masculinity of previous movies surrounding like FBI investigators or undercover cops. So if you bring this woman in, you immediately have someone who's kind of, I wouldn't say anti that, but you have someone who, as you said, is looking at it from a fresh perspective. Everybody else who's like a 30-year-old young hotshot guy writer is going to be like, how do I write the next Donnie Brasco?
Exactly, and it's like, I'm just a Jewish kid from Philly, and it's like, I have my experience. All I cared about was playing ball. All I ever wanted to do was play pro ball, but that was never going to happen. There were limitations to that. So thankfully, I was blessed to earn my right to play college ball. But my point in that is that that's my life. That's my background. That's my history. I never went undercover. I never risked my life. I never lived Bob Mazur's experience, which ultimately for me is where my hope after The Infiltrator is I start making personal movies. I'm a filmmaker because Do the Right Thing and Spike Lee. You know, he makes his personal movies back then. I think that's when he's at his best. So for me, I want to do that in my future, and it's a tough time right now to do that. But my point in all that is, I needed to have Bob, and I had to bring Bob in and understand that the truth of Bob's life was so much more interesting than the fictionalization of it. So the key to this sort of like opening and this wide berth of opportunity was Bob. Without Bob, I've met every writer in town, the hottest writers. They're all doing the same thing. They're just regurgitating ideas of stuff that they've seen from 100 years ago that they forgot, from movies they've seen recently, like the level of originality. That's why we all love Tarantino, because he's referencing stuff, but it's from stuff you guys have never seen or thought of or heard, because he's watching Korean cinema, he's watching world cinema, he's watching stuff from all over. So his voice is so fresh.
He also subverts everything that we've seen or know about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Flips it right on its head every time.
There's also so much alpha male energy in the film inherent in the story anyway. So what I found fascinating by Brad having his mother write the screenplay was that not only does the experience in life inform what she wrote, but there's a female component, a perspective that's in the film that actually gives it for as tense and as taut and as dangerous and as hard-hitting as the film is, there's a kind of softness to it and strength in the presence of the female characters, whether you're talking about my wife, Gloria, as played by Elena Anaya, or Kathy Ertz is played by Diane Kruger, and of course the woman who, Aubrey, what's her name?
Oh, Juliet Aubrey.
Juliet Aubrey
who plays
Ev. There's a I don't know, poignancy to those portrayals that gives it a kind of feminine energy to it.
Absolutely. Next question.
Hey, you two. Check out the film. The trailer looks badass. So my question for both of you is, where did you find the courage to follow through with this project? Because I know in recent times, when people deal with the cartel, a lot of people in the entertainment business, especially with the news bits about El Chapo, entertainers tend to go into hiding if you speak out against an organization like that. So what made you want to go forward and put this project out there for the world to see?
I think if you approach anything in life with trepidation, you're just never going to achieve your goal. As a man, if you're walking in New York City street and you see a lady and you want to grab her number and you go over to approach her and you're nervous and uncomfortable and you can't get the words out, you're never getting that number. But if you're just confident and not thinking about it, she might think you're super cool for a minute and actually get lucky. So I think it's the same exact analogy to, making this movie. I was like, I want to make The Infiltrator.
Oh my God, he's so dreamy.
But I'll tell you the truth. I mean, what's better than walking the New York City streets and looking at all the ladies and trying to grab numbers if you can? I mean, that's real.
Brad, you strike me as the kind of guy who can do that. You strike me as the kind of guy who
let me
can
tell
pull
you,
that
you know
off.
when I know I really like a lady? Is when I get super nervous and like they walk by me and 20 yards have gone by and I'm like, Brad, you have to ask this woman for her number or you're going to kill yourself if you don't. And I turn my butt right back around. I run right up there and I do my best. It's been a long time since I did that, but at the end of the day, at least if I get rejected, I know I asked. So, you find a way. But that's the truth to the answer to that question. Once I decided to make The Infiltrator, I work for the movie. So if I walk out on the street, God forbid, and somebody takes me down as a result of that, look, I'm just doing my job and trying to be the best man I can be. And you don't think about the consequences. If you have to climb Mount Everest and you're just looking at the top, what I tell young people who have goals and dreams, everybody's always trying to especially in today, everything's like instantaneous technology. Everything's instantaneous. So we're just we are so spoiled in this world because everything now, text messaging, everything, answers, da-da-da-da-da. But that's not how life works. It's a journey, it's a time, it's a grind. I've had the living crap beaten out of me in this business, you know. So now to be where I am at this place, it took me 20 years of being a kid, 19, walking these streets, trying to figure my life out. So, you know, you have to take it one step, two step, three step, and one step at a time. And, you know, that's very applicable to, you know, what I think it takes for each of us to achieve what we want out of our life.
I have to ask you another question before we have one more audience question. One of your achievements is directing possibly the comeback music video for Justin Bieber. Can you talk a little bit about
what do you mean?
Yeah, that one. How did that happen? Because at the time when you made that music video, it was before he had sort of made this comeback.
Yeah, so as a kid, I was obsessed with MTV. I mean, like, even while I was excited to do this show today, I was like, yo, it's like TRL. I'm sitting in front of I never, you know, I always wanted to be on TRL.
What's up? I'm Carson Daly.
But so for me, sort of interesting way to approach this. I always wanted to be a music video director. When I looked at movies, I thought movies, when I would go to the theater in my neighborhood, I literally thought they were beamed into the theater. I didn't think the actors were real. You show up and you just see a movie. You don't think about where it came from, how they're made. I didn't know. I was just some dude in a neighborhood, and we'd go to the movies. And, you know, I'd just invite a girl to a movie, or we'd hang out at the mall on Friday nights. Like, that was my life. It was not like, how are movies made and who are these people? It was none of that kind of thing. So I wanted to be a music video director because I would watch the videos and I would be like, yo, that life that they're living, the things that are going in those videos, that's cool. It's some version of Instagram. People are always checking out other people's life thinking it's cooler. But to me, I wanted to make videos. So my goal in going to Hollywood was really in my heart to be a video director. And right when I got in, the music business just got obliterated. And there was no videos to make. There was no career. There was no anything. And when I started to gain the confidence of realizing that I don't have to be Martin Scorsese, I don't have to be Oliver Stone, I just have to be me, I was like, well, okay, then I can pursue being, you know, a feature filmmaker. So what I would do is, now the video budgets back in the day with Hype Williams and Paul Hunter, they were making $1 million videos. Mark Romanek, and now the videos are nothing. They're pennies and change.
$50K if you're lucky.
So Josh Reese, the kid that I snatched out of the closet, on his side, he was doing videos. He did a Kanye video. And I was like, yo, you did a Kanye video, man. That's crazy. Like, I would love to direct a Kanye video. Like, that'd be a dream for me. And he's like, oh, Brad, features is everything. You're a feature director. And I'm like, no, man, I want to do videos. He's like, it's easy, it's easy. So I live in Venice, and he's doing a video that day. And he says, there's this dude, he calls me up. He's like, you know how you want to do videos? I'm like, yeah. He's like, there's this dude, Raj Rubina. He's like New York street cat. He's like, just come. I'm telling you, he's going to hook you up. So I show up, and we're talking to Roger, and somebody tells Roger I directed The Lincoln Lawyer. And Roger's like, it's weird. I have people trip out. And I'm just like, yo, I'm just a dude. I made a movie. It's not like, you know, Roger's like, yo, you make Lincoln Lawyer? Man, I'll get you a video, no problem. He's like, total, like, he's like, in 24 hours, I'll have a video for you. And I was like, you know, I heard that before, man. If I had died for everybody, he was going to get me something.
Hollywood sounding.
Yeah, and literally the next day he calls me. He's like, I got something we're going to go in for. He's like, they want a feature film director. And he's like, it's the opening track on Justin Bieber's new album. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So I wrote this treatment. In my original version, I dropped Justin into, if you've seen it or not, it's 1 billion views, so I assume you might have.
Are you serious? Billion views?
Imagine if The Infiltrator got 1 billion views, dude. We'd be out of here on a rocket ship.
Wow.
AOL what? We'd start our own AOL.
Branson, nothing. He will take over the world eventually. I promise you. Keep an eye on this one.
But I dropped him into EDC, which is the Electric Daisy Carnival, and I'd never met Justin or Scooter Braun, who were like family to me. Both of those guys have changed my life. And I got on the phone in a conference call with them, and I was like getting everything ready, and I supposedly had the job. But the joke was I was told I had the job, but like neither of them had approved me. You know, I'll tell you, Hollywood's a crazy place. And Bieber gets on the phone. He's like, listen, man, like, this whole Electric Daisy thing and electronic music, like, that's not me. Like, and I was like, well, he's like, I'm into skateboarding. So, you know, I want the job. So I'm like, all right, man, I got an idea. I'll just drop here at a skate park. And I just had to figure out the hustle in that moment to close. And Scooter's like, all right, I think they were like, all right, we got the Lincoln Lawyer dude. And Danny Rose, a kid I went to college with, knew Scooter and put in a good word for me, which I think really gave Scooter a level of comfort. So we dropped him, obviously, in the skate park, and that's how we pulled that off. But that was 36 hours before shooting. So I had to scrap everything. And then I was at my boy Eric Lee's house, and he builds skate ramps. So I went to Eric while I'm on the phone. I mute the phone. I got Bieber in him. I'm like, got on speaker. And I'm like, dude, can you build a skate park? And he's like, yeah, how much money and time? I'm like, it's probably no money, and we got 24 hours. And he's like, all right, I'm in. And literally, he built the whole skate park in 24 hours. Like, Eric Lee is a god. Like, amazing. So we made it happen, and why that was such an important thing for me is it brought, making the movie with Justin, his level of commitment, Scooter's support, it brought me back to why I love filmmaking, which I needed that reminder after the arduous conditions on The Infiltrator, the nightmare of Runner Runner, how tough Lincoln Lawyer was. You lose perspective of your life. And when I was having so much fun on set, it was hour 19, day 2, and Justin's like, Brad, what do I do? Like, he was so amped. And I was like, I love this kid. I was like, I feed off that energy. I was so inspired by this young man, and he was just giving me everything. And, in finality, I was in Miami. I went to a show, and I'm like, blessed to know Bieber, so I get to go backstage, which is super cool. Even just walking back there is cool. And I tell him about this movie I want to make, and I'm like, dude, I need you to star in this movie. I'm telling you, like, a guy like you is this successful, you can't change your life. But if you come in a movie and you just rock it in a, like, grimy, gritty, hard way nobody ever sees you doing, like, the world would be like, what? And we were texting because I wanted him to come to the premiere because I knew my mom. My mom would have tripped out. And he unfortunately wasn't able to. I had to see his family. And he sent me a text. He said, let's make some history. And in my heart, I was like, yo, dude, I'm going to hold you to that. So we'll see what happens.
Whoa, we might be getting a Bieber crime movie.
Wait a second. He's courting musical superstars into the acting game? There's not a few enough jobs already? Should I be a little jealous here?
Well...
I think we have time for...
That's right. He and I are different classifications anyway.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
How's it going, guys? So you guys spent a lot of time on a specific project, even more so for Brad being the director. How do you guys know when a story is good enough to warrant bringing it to life?
That's a question for a filmmaker.
It's probably a question for you, too, as an actor. I bet you get a lot of scripts that you're like, this isn't ready yet.
Well, for this specific story, from my point of view anyway, it's just inherently cinematic. The exploits that go off in this story as it unfolds cinematically, they're almost too outrageous to be believed. That's what makes it such a compelling film, I think, beyond the performances and beyond the good direction, is that the story, by nature of what it is just so damn compelling and fraught with tension. In this case, it was obvious.
Look at the tagline for the movie. I mean, that's a movie. The true story of one of the biggest drug cartel in history getting taken down by one man. That's a movie.
For me, everything is ruled by emotion. What I'm thinking every minute, what I'm feeling, and I think there's no question in my heart that, what moves me. I mean, they asked me a question about Kanye, and this dude, Aaron, who was hanging with me, because I was saying what I really respect about Kanye, how he just is trying to be him, whether you like it or not. And Aaron turned to me and he's like, it was in the same vein of what I was trying to say. He was a little bit more articulate about it. He's like, I like dude because he just makes you feel good or bad. Whatever it is, it just makes you feel. So when I'm trying to evoke a story that I can actually cling on to with respect to your question and lock in on it, it's like, I want to move people. I want you to lock in a way that the time that you put in was worth your time. And the only way to do that is to live vicariously through these characters. So when I read Bob's book, there's all these things in the book that are crazy. I mean, it's like, wow. But the thing and the reason I wanted to make the movie is in the opening, he's doing a job which is not in the movie, but he's doing a job with this guy, Perlowin, who's the biggest weed distributor probably at that time in our country, and he's working out of San Francisco, and they're moving bales and bales of weed, off the shores. of California. And very similar to the movie, there's a scene that he discusses where he's with Pearl Irwin. It's the night before. The next day is the big bust, and they're sitting around and they're holding hands. The scene that's in the movie that Benjamin did. So we sort of amalgamated certain things. And they're praying and they're thanking Bob and how he's such a dear friend. And then the next day is the bust. And the scene in the book is Bob's on a, I always imagine it in my head as I read it as a payphone, but I talked to Bob about it the other day. He's like, nah, I was on a hotel phone. But anyway, Bob's on a phone. He calls his wife, Ev. And he tells her, like, because, you know, he's undercover, he's deep cover, and he calls his wife, and he says, in this instance, obviously, they're across the country. And he says, you know, Ev, it's over. And, you know, and he's telling her all the details. And all of a sudden, he just breaks down in tears. And he starts crying like a baby to his wife because he just betrayed these criminals that he fell in love with and became friends with. And that just rocked me. I was like, I want to make that movie. That's interesting to me, the core emotion of that. I want to dive into that ocean. And that was why I made The Infiltrator.
Absolutely, and I think you definitely get a sense of that in the film by the end, at the very least. The final moments, not giving anything away, I think portray that perfectly. And with a certain amount of romance, too, I think.
Yeah, no. The movie's a love affair. Well, no, I did this cool thing for Movie Line. They said, you know, the woman working with me said you have to pick your top 10 movies, and you have to pick a genre. So this is sort of like, I believe in tweeners. I don't believe, you know, in Hollywood, they always want to put you in a box. As a director, as a movie, everything's in a box. And I don't want to be in a box. So for the questionnaire, they said, you have to pick a genre. So I said, I want to pick romances. And she was like, what do you mean? The Infiltrator's not a romance movie. And I'm like, no, it is. I said, Bob's fallen in love all over the place with men, women, all these different relationships. So I got to list my romances. And I picked all these movies that you don't think are romances, but yet I explained to you why they were. Just my point of view, whether you like it or not. And I think
Throw me one. What was one that we wouldn't
one's
think was romance?
well, like True Romance, obviously. Yeah. You know, that's obvious. But I'm thinking, well, Dog Day Afternoon, for me, you know, like that's a romance movie. You don't find out so much later. But there's no question about that. I said Fletch because I think I had a love affair with Fletch because it taught me how to bullshit. I wanted to be Irwin P. Fletcher. Chevy Chase was my man. When I saw him, like, you know, people don't probably know that today, but that ages me a little bit. But I watched him do his game, and I said, wow, that's suave, that's cool.
Guys, congratulations on The Infiltrator. Thank you so much for joining me. When can people see the movie?
It's out today. Today, it's in the theaters.
The Infiltrator is out today in theaters. Go check it out. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.